Good evening, and thank you for being here. I hope you're doing well today, and that this moment finds you steady. My name is Think Revenge. If these stories speak to you, you're welcome to subscribe and stay a while. Which city are you watching from? You can share it in the comments. Now let me tell you what happened. I grew up in a house where fairness was spoken about often, but practiced selectively. My parents believed in appearances. Neighbors saw Sunday dinners, tidy hedges, polite smiles inside. There was a quiet hierarchy we never named. My sister, Anna, sat at the top of it. I learned early not to argue with that gravity. Things simply moved toward her. When we were children, the differences were small enough to excuse. If she needed new shoes, they appeared. If I did, I was told mine were still usable. When she struggled with school, tutors were arranged. When I did, I was reminded that resilience builds character. I told myself it would even out with time. Adults like to say childhood isn't a ledger. I believed them. As we got older, the stakes grew. University choices came with price tags. My parents emptied a savings account for Anna's tuition without hesitation. For me, they suggested loans and part-time work, framed as an opportunity. I took it. I worked nights, studied mornings, and learned how to carry fatigue quietly. When Anna switched majors twice, there were no lectures about commitment. When I asked to switch once, there was a long talk about responsibility. The first public crack appeared at my engagement dinner. It was meant to be small. My partner and I had invited both families to a restaurant we could afford. Midway through dessert, my father stood to toast. He spoke about family pride, about sacrifices, about how proud he was of Anna's recent promotion. Then he smiled at me and added, almost as an afterthought, that I had found my way eventually. Laughter rippled, gentle but real. I smiled too, because correcting a parent in public comes with consequences you pay later. After that night, something in me settled. Not anger, recognition. I stopped expecting balance. I stopped offering explanations. When my parents asked for help moving Anna into a new apartment they paid for, I declined politely, citing work. When they asked me to co-sign a loan for her car, I said no and didn't elaborate. These were small boundaries, but they felt large at the time. The pattern revealed itself fully when my mother fell ill. It wasn't dramatic at first. Fatigue, tests, waiting rooms. I took time off work to attend appointments, learn the language of labs and referrals. Anna visited when she could, which was often after reminders. During one appointment, a doctor asked about family history and living arrangements. My mother answered vaguely. The doctor looked at me, then back at her, and said gently that clarity mattered. In that moment, I realized how often clarity had been avoided in our house. When my mother recovered enough to talk about practicalities, finances came up. My parents wanted to simplify things for the future. They spoke about fairness again. There would be adjustments, they said. Anna needed stability. I nodded, listening. I asked calmly what that meant. My father slid a folder across a table. Inside were drafts of documents that made the hierarchy official. The house would go to Anna. The remaining assets would be managed by my parents as they saw fit. I would receive a small cash amount to help with flexibility. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I asked if the numbers included the money I had contributed over the years, the renovations I paid for when the roof leaked, the medical bills I covered quietly when insurance lagged. My mother looked surprised. My father said those were family contributions, not investments. The word settled between us. I asked for time to review the documents with a lawyer. My parents exchanged a look. My father said there was no need to complicate things. I said I preferred to understand before agreeing to anything. That was the first time I felt dismissed without disguise. My sister wasn't there that day. She didn't need to be. The lawyer was practical, unromantic. She asked for records. I brought bank statements, receipts, and mails. We laid them out like artifacts. She didn't comment on fairness. She spoke about facts. According to the numbers, my contributions over a decade were not incidental. They were substantial. According to the law, intent mattered, but so did evidence of reliance and expectation. There were options, not dramatic ones, orderly ones. I went back to my parents with information, not accusations. I explained what the records showed. I said I wasn't seeking to punish anyone. I wanted an arrangement that reflected reality. My father's face tightened. He said families don't keep score. I replied that families also don't pretend score. Doesn't exist when it's written down. Asterisk the truth surfaced slowly. Through process rather than confrontation. My parents agreed to mediation. Anna joined, defensive at first. Then quieter as numbers replaced narratives. She said she hadn't known how much I paid. I believed her. Knowing had never been required of her, the mediator asked questions. That didn't allow for evasion, dates, amounts, decisions. Each answer built a picture that wasn't flattering, but it was accurate. Asterisk in the end. There was a revision. The house would be sold later. Proceeds divided with adjustments and acknowledged contributions. Trust accounts were restructured. There were apologies, some earnest, some procedural. No one cried, no one stormed out. It was all very adult, which made it more difficult and more real. Asterisk afterward, the quiet decision came. I stepped back. I didn't call as often. I stopped anticipating needs before they were voiced. When my parents invited me to help plan Anna's next move, I declined. Again, politely, without an explanation. When Anna asked if everything was okay, I said yes, and meant that it was okay enough. Asterisk the aftermath was calm. Boundaries did their work without speeches. Holidays became shorter. Conversation stayed on safe ground. There was a dignity in not reopening what had been addressed. My parents adjusted slowly, learning that access is a privilege shaped by respect. Anna learned that independence isn't a punishment. I learned that fairness doesn't arrive as a gift. It arrives when you insist on process and accept the cost. Asterisk years later. I still think about that engagement dinner, about the toast and the laughter. It doesn't sting anymore. It reminds me how easy it is to mistake endurance for consent. I didn't change my family by winning an argument. I changed my place in it by choosing clarity and stepping back when clarity was ignored. Asterisk I live a quieter life now. It's not smaller. It's measured. I keep records. I keep promises. I show up where I'm invited as an equal. And when I'm not, I don't force my way in. That, more than anything, is what changed everything.